Hey everybody, this is Ron and welcome to this week's edition of Live Web TV. And just so you know, we still haven't got a name yet. Now we got a lot of you to submit names, but frankly, they all sucked. So get me some good names in here. I'm not going to just stick a name on this. I told Paul yesterday, I'm not going to pick the worst of the best of the worst. I want some good titles. So get me a short title that I can put on this to put in front of Live Web TV. Now, last week I did a seminar on how to determine the market value of a property. This week I'm going to do one on what to offer on ugly houses. So we're doing these based on what you tell us you want me to do them on, and don't forget the questions. So as soon as I get through this short session here, I'm going to answer a couple of questions, and that'll be this week's lesson. So let's get started. Before you can make an offer on an ugly house, first let me define an ugly house, because it's not necessarily ugly. In the old days, we used to look for properties that needed serious rehabs, then we could buy them cheap enough. But today, that's just not the case. Most of the properties you're going to buy today are going to be bank-owned, and they're just not that ugly. I'll tell you, the last 5 or 6 bank-owned properties I bought, I spent almost no money on them. They just come in great shape. So let's change the word ugly house for cash purchase for the sake of this seminar, because that's really what we're doing here. I'm going to show you how to get to the bottom line offer on a cash purchase. And frankly, I don't care who the seller is, whether it's bank owner or a FSBO, it's the same offer, and it's the same process that we go through, because it's still a cash purchase. So let me go through that, but please do not forget that this has nothing to do with taking over debt on pretty houses. This has nothing to do with anything except I'm making an all-cash offer. So this formula does not apply to the pretty house business, so don't get that confused. All right, to begin, you cannot make an offer on anything unless you know the R. R stands for after repaired value. Don't ever make an offer on a piece of real estate unless you have a good idea of what the property is worth in excellent condition. Remember, after repaired value, not as is value. As is value is a worthless number that you pluck from air that it means absolutely nothing. So, if you don't know how to do ARV, go back to last week's lesson and review that. Or get into my Quick Start school, where we get to spend a lot of time and go through a lot of examples on it. But you have to be able to do that. I gave you some websites on last week's show, and there's a ton of them out there for you to go get comps to determine the ARV. Alright? Second thing you have to know is the asking price. Now this is easy when you're dealing with bank-owned properties, because if it's listed in the MLS, they're telling you what they're asking. If it's on an auction, there is no asking price, so you're just going to have to go bid up to what you want to bid, and that's the end of it. If you're going to a foreclosure sale to buy these all-cash deals, same thing. But when they're offered to you, the asking price is right there, not a problem. However, if I'm dealing with a FSBO and I'm paying all cash for a property, there's only one place I can get the asking price, and that's from the person that owns the house. So don't hesitate a minute to ask. Again, bank owned, don't bother. But if it's individually owned, must know the asking. And thirdly, repairs. Now here's one that everybody gets hung up on, but it's really not that complicated. Fortunately for you, next week I'm going to do a training session on how to estimate the repairs on a property, and you're going to be shocked how simple it really is to do just exactly that. All I really need is a general repair cost. I don't want you to try to go out there. In fact, if you happen to go to the house with a pencil and a paper in your hand, too much work. That's not what I need. I need to know whether it's really ugly, needs a lot of work, whether it needs some work, or whether it needs little or no work. That's really all I need to know. And we'll throw a number at that, and you can do the same thing. So stay tuned next week and I'll show you how to do that very, very simply. And last is the loan. Now, again, if it's a bank-owned property, what's the loan? The answer is nothing, because it got wiped out when the bank took the property back, so you don't need to worry about that. But if it's a FSBO, absolutely must know the loan amount. In fact, the loan amount may tell us whether we can even make an all-cash offer or not. For example, if they owe more on it than I'd pay cash, then an all-cash offer is out the window, unless I wanted to go do a short sale. So, must know the loan amount if there's a loan existing. When you're dealing with bank-owned properties in the MLS, though, there is no loan, so don't worry about it. So again, I think most of the properties you're going to buy today are bank-owned. So if that's the case, still need ARV, still need repairs, and again, if I'm buying it out of the MLS, the asking price is right in front of my nose. Don't care about loan. But you got to have these answers before I can determine what to offer. All right? Let me give you a formula for determining what I coined Mayo. That's maximum allowable offer. And just for the record, that is, my Mayo is my term. I made it up about 100 years ago and it's now industry standard. In case anybody asks, I came up with the word Mayo. In fact, I even came up with the term ARV, which is now industry standard. So that's how old I am. All right, here's your formula for Mayo. It's very simple. It's ARV times 70% minus repairs equals Mayo. Mayo, again, is maximum allowable offer. But please do not be fooled by this formula. It's only a formula. It's a threshold by which you cannot cross. If you cross this threshold, I will personally punish you. You're paying way too much for the property. Notice my next line. Never pay Mayo. In today's market, we have such an abundance of properties that we can buy all cash. In fact, just today, I was at a foreclosure auction bidding on a house, and there's no way I'd paid Mayo. In fact, Mayo, however, or what you're going to pay cannot be as simple as a formula, because there's other conditions that you have to look at that are case by case. For example, I want you to buy properties today that are in sellable areas. By sellable areas, I mean, does the market really like that neighborhood? Does the market ask for the properties in that neighborhood? Or is it a war zone or a semi-war zone? The more sellable the neighborhood, the closer to Mayo I will allow you to come, because the easier your exit strategy becomes and faster you're going to get in and get out. The worse the neighborhood, the farther below Mayo I would expect you to offer. I will tell you right now that I'm only working in the good neighborhoods. I've picked 5 or 6 zip codes here in Florida, and that's all I'm going to buy houses in. And any one of those zip codes, I'm going to have to pay a little bit more than I would if it was in some of the other areas of Jacksonville, because they're in high demand areas. So I'll give you a rule of thumb. Now, what's a rule of thumb? That's something that'll get you in trouble if you don't apply common sense to it, because you cannot use my rule of thumb if you're going to bid on properties down in the war zone or really, really low income areas. I'm paying right now at or about 80% of Mayo for the properties that I buy. Some are more, some are less. Now remember, I said 80% of Mayo, not 80% of R. So don't get those two confused. So I'm actually paying about 80% of 70% minus repairs. So I hope that helps. And frankly, if you just get that internalized in your head, it won't be too hard for you to go out there and make all cash properties based on common sense of formula after you determine the R. All right? Lauren, why don't you come up here right now? We'll answer a couple of questions for you this week. This is Lauren. She is our DAM roving reporter.
DAM roving reporter.
Okay, DAM stands for?
Director of Alternative Marketing.
Director of Alternative Marketing. So she's our DAM roving reporter. You'll see her actually broadcasting from some of our upcoming events as well. So we just did .com last week.
We did.
It's a great event in Dallas. Phenomenal event. We changed some lives this past weekend, didn't we?
I called it the life-changing event because I heard it so many times.
The life-changing event. You heard this from the people. So
yeah.
You guys are going to be sent a bunch of video testimonials that we asked them to give us. Make sure you get into the next .com event, which is now, actually is going to be held in Alberta, isn't
yes.
it, in March, but you can tune in online, so don't have to go to Canada to go to it. Okay, what questions do we have today?
We have our first one from Sharon Collins. It says, Ron, due to the change in the financial laws when selling a seller-financed property, please give us the perimeters of what steps need to be taken to keep us out of trouble.
Okay, good question, because last year they did pass a law that for you to sell a owner-financed property right now to an owner-occupant, you need a mortgage originator in the middle. For example, normally if you were to go to apply for a loan at a bank, you would need a loan person between the borrower and the bank. And same thing here. They're looking at this as if we're granting a loan to our buyer, which we are. So you get a mortgage originator who understands the new law on your team, and they'll charge you $300, $400, $500, whatever they charge. They should deal with your buyer. You tell them what to offer, you tell them the numbers, but they communicate with the buyer, and there's some paperwork they have to get to comply with the new rule, but frankly, that's the long and the short of it. If you just get that in the middle, that should work. Check with any loan originator you want. We use Craig Rodeski out of Tampa, And his number is 727-593-3353, and I'm amazed that I can remember that. 727-593-3353. Craig Rodeski.
Okay. The next one is from Victoria Riggs.
Okay.
Hi Ron, I live in a very high-priced area on Long Island. Is it possible to do a wholesale deals in another state for me?
Okay. All right, Victoria, I don't care where you live, as long as there's houses, there's plenty of deals that you can do wholesale. Your numbers just might change, but truth is, the higher price area you live in, the more money you get to make on that spread. Long Island's got properties you can buy cheap just like every place else, especially if they're bank owned like we just been described. So if you were to make an offer down here at 80% or below of Mayo and get it accepted, you shouldn't have any trouble at all finding somebody to give you closer to Mayo than you agreed to pay. And that could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 the difference where you live. So yes, you do, there's plenty of business right where you live. Now, can I wholesale houses out of town? Certainly. Because I don't have to go visit them. Somebody can go look at them for me. I don't have to hire a contractor. I don't have to raise money to do any of that. But I'll tell you right now, you should start where you're at and quit letting people talk you out of not doing business on Long Island. Wherever there are houses, there are people who need to sell them and others who need to buy them. I happen to have students in Long Island. They're making a killing there. So why don't we stay where we know what's underneath the grass instead of going where it's greener and there might be manure under it. Okay, thank you for the questions. Thank you for both questions, and hope that helps, and we'll see you next week on our live web TV broadcast.